Welcome to the Holistic Health Bites podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Nicholson, crime scene investigator turned functional health investigator. This podcast is here to share bite-sized episodes and unique interviews on a wide variety of health topics to empower, enlighten, and educate you to live your best, most vibrant life. Disclaimer: all information you hear on this podcast is for information only and constitutes individual opinions of the person speaking. This should not be taken as medical advice. Being a listener of this show does not initiate a practitioner-client relationship between you and the hosts or panelists on this show. Please discuss these topics with your medical professionals before making any changes to your health. Okay, let's dive in. Welcome back to the Holistic Health Bites podcast. Today, we're going to have an interesting conversation around postpartum health and specifically how that relates to metabolic health. I am joined with special guest, Dr. Brandy Cummings. Thank you so much for joining, Brandy. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. This is going to be a fun conversation for anyone who's ever had children and kind of felt like things just were never the same again. I think that's such a brilliant way to say it, that you hear that all the time from your clients. So why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about you and quick introduction?
Okay, great. So I came into this space like most people with a personal kind of health journey, and I had a 2-year stint of my life with extremely debilitating mold illness. At that point, I was already in the health world. I had just opened my practice actually, and that period of time where I was really struggling with that mold illness was just really one of the lowest, darkest points in my life. And I also, suffered a miscarriage during that time. And so I really had to completely pivot my whole life. I had to quit my job and find the right practitioners. And I was able to overcome that and went on to have, beautiful, healthy babies. And so I was also, while during that period, I was working on my master's degree. And when I graduated and I was starting to feel better, I was like, this is what I have to do. So I really pivoted everything about my practice and really went into this, environmental med piece. And then, after my experience of having my daughter and just being so aware of the massive gaps in support that there are in care for a person during that time, I really married the two together. And it's been working out great. Primarily now, I work a lot with postpartum women, even if they gave birth 10 plus years ago, because postpartum is forever, right? That act of becoming a parent, a mother, really changes us forever. And so, just like you said, what I hear a lot is that things were never the same ever since I gave birth, right? It's really that catalyst or trigger for a cascade of symptoms. So that is primarily who I focus on helping now, and I just love it.
Oh, that's such a unique specialty and definitely not one that I've heard anyone else focus on. So I think that's brilliant. I want to dive in a little bit. We'll obviously get to the whole pregnancy and postpartum situation, but I want to talk just briefly about the mold picture. Like, how did you figure that out? Was it your moldy house? Like, how did that whole thing transpire that you even figured out that mold illness was going on?
It was a really long road. I mean, like I said, I was really sick for 2 years. I saw a lot of specialists and doctors, and I wasn't getting any answers. And I went to a new naturopath, and she kind of got me somewhat better. At least I was functioning, but I was just like, gosh, something is missing. Um, and I I knew I was exposed to mold at my job. There was a lot of black mold in the basement of that building. It was like a historic 100-plus-year-old building. And that also correlated with when my symptoms started, of when I started working there. So I knew that that was the place of exposure. And then I just kept digging, and I found the right practitioner, and we did the right testing, and he put me on a protocol. And it doesn't happen like this for everybody, but for me, God, it was just like a light switch flipped. Everything. I was just like, oh my gosh. For the first time in 2 years, I was like, this doesn't have to be my life. Like, I am gonna get better. And like I said, it was really a dark time in my life. I honestly got to the point where I was like, I have to get better or like I need to die. Like I that sounds so extreme now, but at the time I was just like, those are my only two options because I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so I think about him, that practitioner that really helped me all the time. He actually lives in Texas. I'm going to be in Texas next week. I was like, I should email him. Maybe we could get together. But, I really feel like he saved my life and just having the right people on your team. And then from there, I just got better and better and better. And then I got pregnant with my first daughter. And so I kind of have to pivot my approach. We don't want to do a lot of heavy duty detoxification during pregnancy. Um, and yeah,
Yeah, it's such a great story. And, I think so many people maybe don't have that, like they know there's mold there, they can see it, they're aware of that piece. So many people just suffer with this kind of mysterious illness and they never really are able to connect it until either that mold is discovered and they're like, oh, this could be part of it.
yeah,
Or they go see the right kind of practitioner who does this sort of testing and tells them, you've got a mold problem. So I think that's really interesting that you kind of knew that that's what it was. And yet it still took, the right specialist to really help you dig out of that.
yeah, totally.
So, okay. So now let's turn into more of the pregnancy and postpartum situation. So, you get pregnant, you have to back off on some of the protocol stuff because, like you said, we don't want to be doing those things during pregnancy and be, circulating all of these toxins that now can go directly into this developing baby.
Yeah.
So, what did that look like? What did you have to, do throughout your pregnancy, knowing that this is something that you already had, inside of you that you were dealing with? What did you have to do differently than maybe someone who didn't have this known thing that they were already working on?
Well, the really great thing for me is that at that point I was feeling so good. I was feeling just full of vitality and I was feeling robust and strong and like I had good nutrient reserves. And so I backed off of some of the things that I was doing, like before I was in my sauna every day. I wasn't getting into a really hot sauna anymore. I wasn't taking certain supplements anymore. But I just really kind of continued on because I was feeling so good. So I just kind of cut the stuff out that could be potentially dangerous and kept going with my nutrition plan. And I really feel like it helped me have a pretty insignificant pregnancy as far as like health concerns. Um, when I mentioned earlier about becoming aware of the gaps in support, I feel like um, that experience really came from just the providers that I had on my team. It wasn't really from symptoms that I was having. And I actually switched my whole birth care team halfway through my pregnancy because I just felt like something wasn't a good fit, something wasn't right. And, got with people that were more in alignment. And then after giving birth, it's an interesting piece of my story because I didn't want to pick back up any of the, heavy duty detoxification while I was nursing. And then that child nursed until she was almost 3.
Wow.
So it was a really long time. And then it was only like, I think 7 months later before I got pregnant again. And that baby is just about 15 months old and she just stopped nursing. So this is such a timely conversation because for the first time in literally over 6 years, I feel like I can finally kind of get back to it. So I myself am, doing testing on myself and kind of putting myself through some new protocols just to kind of close that circle and make sure, I'm where I need to be for longevity's sake.
Awesome. So obviously you got out of the moldy environment. So you kind of took that piece away.
Oh, yeah, that was
Okay.
really scary. I quit my job. We were not in a financial situation for me to be able to do that, but there was no choice. In my mind, it was literally life and death.
Yeah.
And we went into a whole bunch of debt, paying practitioners and the a sauna and things that we needed. And it was really scary to do that,
Yeah.
but gosh, I'm glad I did. Not that I want people to go into debt, but for us at the time, it was the right thing to do so that I could get over that hump.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your health is priceless. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that sometimes means leaving jobs, leaving houses, spending a lot of money. This stuff can be pricey. And
Yeah.
because it's so specialized and it's so important, unfortunately, it just comes with a price tag, but you can't put a price on your health. So I agree with you. I think a lot of people, would do what they had to do to get through that situation, knowing that, the financial burden is temporary. It's a
Yeah.
big burden in some cases, but it's temporary and you can always get back out of that. But you can't get your health back and you can't get your life back if you miss, decades of it being sick. So I agree.
Absolutely. I never would have been able to build up my practice or go back and get my doctorate degree. None of that,
Yeah.
so it was
Yeah.
a good investment.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the original birth team that you got rid of. What kinds of stuff just felt like it wasn't in alignment? Was it just that you didn't agree with the advice that they were giving? Were they just not giving much at all? What was the story there?
The first thing is that, I got pregnant again and they told me to come back at like 11 weeks. And I was just so taken aback by that. I was like, no, 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 no. I have like been really sick. I've been chronically ill. I like have had a miscarriage. Like I need, excuse me, earlier help. Like, what do you mean come back in like almost trimester two? What? And I was so shocked. And because of my own education, I was just thinking like about all the neurodevelopment happening at that time. And I just felt really unsupported and like, because I just wanted to do all the things I could. And that was the first thing. And then to learn that that's really normal and standard of care. Since the pandemic, they have brought that date earlier, which I think is an improvement. I think they did that in response to how many telehealth visits were happening during the pandemic. So that was a one positive, I guess, that came out of that time. But yeah, I was just so surprised by that. And then when I would talk about my birth plan and I wanted to have a real risk benefit analysis of certain decisions of glucola, of a water birth, and what that looked like and what the risks were. And I wasn't given the opportunity to have any sort of dialogue. It was very much, this is the way we do it, and that's the only option. And that didn't feel good. So I ended up switching my birth team to a team that was actually not, excuse me, not convenient geographically. It was quite a much bigger commute, but it was such a better fit. And it was a wild to have my first appointment with them, and just the extreme difference was crazy.
Yeah. I think that's such a valuable lesson that we all need to learn from because, this was a pretty clear case for you that you wanted to have these deeper conversations and you wanted to be able to, have a risk benefit conversation and they didn't want anything to do with that. And I think the same thing could happen in any health condition, in any medical visit. If your provider isn't listening to you, isn't answering your questions, isn't open to opportunities or options, sometimes you just have to cut bait and go find someone else. And I think this is a really valuable lesson that you are in charge of your health and you have to find a team of people that will support you on your journey. It's your body, your life. You get to decide. So I think so many people just go with whatever their doctor tells them and they don't ask the hard questions and they don't push for their own beliefs and preferences and desires and get all their questions answered. I talked to so many people who are like, this is what my doctor said. And I'm like, well, did you ask about why this or that? And they're like, no. And yet they
Yeah.
don't like what they're being told. They're just buying it and going with it. And I think we all have to feel a little bit more empowered to ask the hard questions, push for resources or additional information or whatever that looks like. So I think it's a really powerful story to say you have the ability to just up and leave even if it means a longer drive.
Yeah.
I think
That
that's
is so funny because that is almost word for word what I tell my clients. I say, This is your body, your life, and your health. You're the pilot. I'm just the co-pilot. I'm honored to be here. I'm here to help you navigate, but you're the pilot and you're calling the shots. Like
Yep.
I say that sentence with every single client.
Exactly. Yeah, because even with us, even the clients that we work with, yeah, it's still you. We're just here to make recommendations and give you education and resources. We're not here to tell you what to do. There's no judgment if you decide to go a different direction. It's your
Exactly.
body, it's your health, it's your journey. You get to decide. And that's how it should be. So I don't think any doctors or practitioners of any kind should be offended by questions or by someone offering a different opportunity or a different path, or just having the dialogue. I think is so important. And so yeah, I really would encourage everyone to do exactly what you did and ask those hard questions and be willing to go find someone else if you're not
Yeah,
getting the service that you want.
exactly.
Yeah, I hear it so often, especially when you come back to pregnancy specifically. So many of my friends, their doctors are like, eat whatever you want, you're eating for two,
Oh
and
my
just
gosh.
all the things that I'm like, no, do you really want to start your child off by eating, candy and soda and ice cream and just junk food? Is that really the developmental path you want them to start with? Like,
Also, it's just such flawed advice
it
because you
is.
really don't need that many more calories,
You're
a
not
few
eating for two
hundred.
adults.
No, definitely not. A few hundred, trimester two, maybe 500 trimester three, but not 4,000,
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. So yeah, I think we all just need to have that little ability in our minds that no, this is my body. I get to ask questions and I get to say, I don't like the direction you're going and I'm going to go somewhere
Yeah,
else.
totally.
I think that's great. So, okay, so you get pregnant, you go through the thing, you switch teams, you find a team that's much more open to all of these discussions and, preferences and things and answers your questions. You figure out what path you're going to take. So, what happens then?
Well, so then my plan was to give birth at the birth center. I labored at the birth center for over 20 hours and I was just getting too tired and I wasn't progressing and we made the decision to transfer to the hospital. So I transferred to the hospital and I didn't give birth until many, 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 many hours later. I was able to have a vaginal birth, but I was in active labor for well over 30 hours. Like it was
Ugh.
just so long and laborious. And in the hospital, I again had some negative experiences. I was told that, um, well, later I found out that I had fractured my tailbone in childbirth, and I kept telling them how much my tailbone was hurting and I needed help to go to the bathroom. And sorry, I don't know what is with my throat today. And, I just wasn't getting the support. I was told that breastfeeding had failed. I was told that it was time to switch to formula. Like, baby isn't even 2 days old at this point, and we had to have a Billy blanket, and it was just not a good experience. And we we got home, we got discharged, and I called a private lactation consultant to come over, and she saved our breastfeeding relationship because I don't have anything against using formula, but I just felt like to hear that message when my milk hadn't even came in, I felt like that was a mismatch. I was like, what? That doesn't make sense. And so she came over, she got us on the right track. And then, like I said, she ended up nursing till she was like almost 3.
Yeah, so obviously it wasn't something you needed to give up on day one or two. Like,
Right.
yeah, these things take time. And yeah, I think going to a specialist is the right call for a lot of women.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're home. Obviously, lactation is now working, baby's doing well, mom's recovering, all the things. So, kind of, is there more to the journey or really not until after the second pregnancy?
I did have pretty severe postpartum anxiety, during that time. That was really from a lack of a village, a lack of support, which is something I work on so heavily with my clients. We do not gloss over that. I literally have a worksheet where I'm like, we're writing it down. Who's available? What are their jobs? And, we are going to figure this out because it really does take a village.
Yeah, and
Um,
everyone's got people they can reach out to. So, yeah, we need to be okay with asking for that.
and be specific. People
Mhm.
don't know what you need, and don't just ask for exactly what you want. You
Yeah,
know, I want you to come over. I want you to rotate my laundry, whip through my dishes, and bring me something to eat.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
because people don't know. And then they just come over and want to hold your baby, and then that's not helpful. And
right.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, not much more to the story after that. And then um yeah, I got pregnant again. The second pregnancy I felt like was easier. I had a home birth with that pregnancy. Um, and yeah, she weaned herself like like last month. So just such a different kid.
Yeah. I think that's so common. And do you find that that's often the case with the second child, that maybe they go through those stages a little bit quicker because they're looking at the older sibling, or is it just totally random?
I don't know. I mean, I think they do tend to be a little bit more independent, but yeah, so different with
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So then now you're postpartum twice. What changed after the second pregnancy for you?
Um, not a lot after pregnancy. Now that baby has weaned, like I said, I'm just now getting back to doing some of those things that I was doing before. And so really making sure that I'm supporting drainage pathways and detoxification and addressing any mold that there might be, utilizing sauna. I'm just kind of picking up all of those things that you just really can't do. Everything's a little bit on pause. Obviously, there's a million things we can do to support our health during pregnancy and breastfeeding. But when we're going down like a toxicity route, we're just kind of on pause until baby's done nursing. So
Yeah.
just now starting to get back into that.
Okay. So what are some of the things that you would say, like you talked about, creating this village around someone who's having a baby or who's had a baby? What are some of the other things that you see that people maybe don't prioritize or don't quite set up right or just completely miss the mark on, have gotten bad advice about? Like, where are people maybe either not prioritizing or just flat getting it wrong?
Well, in the postpartum period, I see a lot of emphasis on weight loss, which I just feel like that's on the bottom of our priority list right now. We really need to be focused on being nourished, and we were talking prior a little bit about metabolism, and metabolism is inherently increased during pregnancy, but then during postpartum, it's much lower than it was compared to pregnancy. And if we are forgetting to eat or if we're under eating because we have a weight loss goal, that is only going to make the problem worse. And, forgetting to eat is just as common as purposely maybe not eating enough because we're so busy, we're tired, we might not have energy to to make ourselves something to eat. Um, so really focusing on that time being a nourishing time, taking all the time that you can off of work, really maximizing that time and prioritizing just like some, I mean, I don't know, what I would consider like basic nutritional things. Are you getting enough protein? Are you hydrated? Do you have enough omega 3s? Like I know that a lot of women will make like lactation cookies, to have on hand, and I think that's great. I did that too. But really focusing on like protein first. Are we getting enough protein? We have to have protein to rebuild tissue. We have to have protein to heal, and going for that protein first, I feel like is going to be so helpful and supportive of our metabolism, right? If we're only surviving off of oat-based lactation cookies, that isn't going to get us there, right? We
Nope.
have to have that protein. We have to have that really good fat. And then making sure that we're eating a lot of warming foods, including warming spices, because those are really supportive of blood sugar and metabolism as well, and not going for like the cold spinach smoothies as much.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great advice. And for sure, nutrition, I mean, I can see, I don't personally have kids, so I can only imagine. And I've heard from friends and family and, patients who've had babies of their own and the struggles in, especially in those early days when you're not sleeping and, people are trying to be helpful and they bring you food, but it's all like mac and cheese and pizza and it's all, not super high quality protein filled foods. And so, yeah, I think the nutrition piece is key, especially right afterwards, because like you said, you're healing. You just went through a significant medical event and you have a lot of healing to do. You're also naturally insulin resistant during pregnancy because you're in a stage of growth. It's just like during puberty. You're
Yeah.
growing another human and your body is growing. So you're naturally more insulin resistant, which is increasing your body's ability to gain both in fat and in just tissue in general. And it takes a little while for that to recover. And so we really need that protein for healing. We need it for blood sugar management. We need it for stable energy, for hormone rebalancing, for just all the things. And with that protein, we need the healthy fats. Most or a huge chunk of breast milk is fat. And
Yeah.
so we need those healthy fats far more than we need, the big carbohydrate doses and things that we get from the mac and cheese and things that people bring when
Yeah.
you're, just getting home from the hospital. And so, yeah, I think that's a huge thing. And then I know sleep is such a hard one for people to do when you've got, a newborn that's waking up every few hours, and that can last for a long time where it's interrupted sleep and just not great quality. But I think you have to do everything you can to get more sleep too. And maybe that's part of the allowing the village to help out and take some of those night shifts when they can, or help you take naps during the day or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. The sleep is so important, and it's dependent on the village because in a lot of ways, there's not a lot you can do about the sleep, especially in those early days. You're feeding a human, you're taking care of a human. But if you're doing that without a village, it is a million times worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, the other thing I see a lot is, well, first of all, if we have, like you said, we're naturally more insulin resistant during pregnancy. But if during pregnancy we have like gestational diabetes, where that insulin resistance is unmanaged, and like maybe we have to be on insulin for that. But if we have gestational diabetes, and if we look at the literature, having gestational diabetes increases risks of, like metabolic syndrome, like 3 months postpartum. So the point at which to support your body with good nutrition doesn't start when baby comes. It should, I mean, ideally it would start like 6 months before conception, but I mean, anytime you start is better late than never. But supporting that blood sugar regulation during pregnancy will pay you back in dividends in the postpartum period.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. So what other, do you just have like three tips or, something really quick and actionable that people can do to, improve whether they've just had a baby, whether they're currently pregnant, whether they're trying to get pregnant, maybe they've had miscarriages, like whatever that may be. What are like maybe three things that people can prioritize?
Oh, such a good question.
I know there's way more than three.
I know. Um, if they're postpartum, I really recommend working with somebody that will order a complete thyroid panel. There's so much postpartum autoimmunity that can happen, and this is due to that rapid rebound in hormones. This is due to prolactin being increased, also due to microchimerism, which is a mixing of blood between mom and baby. And we see a lot of postpartum autoimmunity, especially Hashimoto's with thyroid. And if we're not looking out for our moms and testing them, then they could be going without treatment. And unfortunately, what I see is a lot of the symptoms, such as weight gain, moodiness, fatigue, losing their hair. A lot of those symptoms get brushed off as just like welcome to motherhood, but in reality, they have like a full-blown autoimmune condition going on. And so that piece can't be missed. So putting that on your radar to have that testing done after you have your baby, not right away, but several months down the road, just to check in on things to make sure you're doing well. Number two, like I said, identify your village, write it down. Do not breeze over this step. Who are they? What's their phone number? When are they available? And what jobs can they do? That is key. That is so, so key. And then, for preconception, I'm kind of doing one in each category here. For preconception, if you have time, meaning time before you conceive, I would really recommend looking into some of these environmental things, really focusing on lowering our total body burden. Where are we having environmental toxic exposures? Do we have a lot of exposure to vehicular exhaust or mold, or what kind of hygiene products or cleaning products are we using? Can we swap those out? Anything we can do to lower that total body burden and maybe start, clearing some of that stuff out, like if there is an issue with mold, because all of everything you do preconception to improve your health does not just benefit you, and it does not just benefit your baby, but it benefits your future grandchildren. And when I think about how to turn this ship around, this ship meaning like general unhealthiness as a whole population, in my mind, that's the ultimate in preventative medicine, right? Like, let's catch these people 2 generations before they're born and do everything we can to optimize health prior to conception, because the benefits on your future grandchildren are going to be huge. And so, again, I say if you have time, because you don't want to be, if you can control it, you don't want to be smack dab in the middle of like a detoxification and then get pregnant. You want to kind of wrap that up, then give yourself a few months and then get pregnant. So
Yeah, I
that's
think
what I got.
that's great advice. And I think, we like to focus a lot on the mom, but I think the fathers can do all of this too. You
Oh
know,
my gosh, yeah.
they're contributing as well. So moms out there or future moms to be, don't just take this all on you. Do this as a household. Involve your parents, involve your siblings, involve everyone else in your life, because why not? They can get healthier along the way. And even though it may not directly impact the child like the two parents will, it will make a difference. So the more you can involve your village again, the better off you'll be, and the easier the whole process will be, because you won't be fighting the uphill battle with everybody around you who's not on the same page. They'll all be with you.
Totally. Can I add one bonus
Of
postpartum
course.
thing? I just thought of it and it's so important. If you've recently had a baby, get outside every day. That is like, it seems so small, and you're like, yeah, 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 what's that really going to do? But it is so important, because you can just get sucked into a bubble in your house and like never see the light of day again for like many months. You have to get outside, you have to breathe fresh air. If you can go for a walk, even better. But also, getting that sunlight in your eyeballs is going to signal to your pineal gland to start producing hormones, and one of those being melatonin, which will then get activated at darkness to help your sleep. And you don't get that from like your light bulb in your house. So get outside every day. You don't have to go for a walk, but just get outside, breathe some fresh air, and get some light in your eyeballs. Obviously,
Yes.
don't look directly at the sun, but
Right. I love that advice. And I would say that's true for all of us, not just
yeah,
if you are pregnant or want to get pregnant or just had a baby. All people need to get outside and see the sun directly every day,
totally.
even on cloudy days, even on cold days, every day. I
That's right.
think that's great advice. So if people are interested in your work, or they want to learn more about what you do or more about your story, where can they find you?
I am at pivotalorigins.com. I am also on Instagram at Pivotal Origins. And I have a free guide that is 7 evidence-based reasons for your never-ending postpartum symptoms. And I will give that as well. And it really goes into things like constipation, anxiety, joint pain, hair loss, all the things. So I think that that will be extremely valuable and helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely link up all of that in the description for this episode, so anyone can just quickly click and get there. So thank you so much for sharing your story and all of the things that you went through and just your valuable tips for everybody out there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And to everyone out there, we'll catch you again on future episodes. Be well. Thanks for being a faithful listener to the podcast. I'd love it if you left me a 5-star review on this podcast so that others can more easily find this valuable information. Did you know I also work one-on-one with clients? I approach solving health challenges like I approached solving crimes, by conducting a thorough investigation into your case. Sadly, hundreds of millions of people in the US have insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes, and the vast majority have no idea. I'm here to fix that. If you struggle with low energy, stubborn weight, hypertension, sleep disturbances, or any other undesired symptoms, let's talk. All you have to do is schedule a free call. The link will be in the show notes. And no, you do not need to live near me.